I'm Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, and I am the one.
Welcome to I Am the One, Entrepreneur Edition, a show that explores the journey of business owners who decided to be the one to make life better for the people they serve. I'm your host, Sonia Thompson, and today's guest is Dr. Kevin Cuccaro. Kevin is the founder of Straight Shot Health, where he helps people reduce their stress, get free from back pain, and create habits for better health. He does this through online courses, blog posts, and his podcast. Kevin's got a ton of lessons to share when it comes from transitioning to working in a job where you're the subject matter expert to building a business where your responsibilities are much broader than your area of expertise. So I'm super excited to share his story with you today. But before we dive into the interview, I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Try Business School. Get the information you need to build the business of your dreams, step by step. Visit trybizschool.com and get started with your free e-course, The 4 People You Need to Build a Successful Business. Now, on to the show. Here's Kevin. Kevin, thanks so much for joining me today. It's great to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sonia. It's always fun to see you.
All right, so let's go ahead and dive right in. Tell us a little bit about Straight Shot Health and what it is that you do.
All right, Straight Shot Health is my website and podcast. I really started out of dissatisfaction. So if you know the quick intro and background is I'm an anesthesiologist, fellowship trained pain physician, practiced in the military, taught residents and doctors there. We did a lot of strong work, but I was convinced that that model, which was sort of fragmented, like I may see a patient, somebody else may do a procedure on them, somebody else may follow up on them. I just wasn't sure we were getting good outcomes. And outcomes for me, when it comes to pain and medicine in general, is that people get better, meaning they don't need to come back and see you again. I think the whole idea that you have to go and see your doctor over and over and over again for perpetuity just doesn't make any sense. So when I left the military, I came to a town in Oregon, and I'm like, well, I'll be the only people seeing patients. I'll be the only people doing procedures if they're appropriate on them, and my outcomes are going to be fantastically better because I'm just this amazing individual, you know. And what I found pretty quickly was that they weren't, meaning people, you know, a lot of people still said they felt better. But when I looked at them, they may not be seeing me, but they were seeing other doctors. And for similar pain, you know, I may do an injection in their back. They may say that was better, but then they were getting knee injections and this, or headaches were getting worse. And that really upset me. I didn't like that. And so you start asking questions, and I was telling somebody the other day, always be careful of the questions you ask because you may not like the answers. So I started looking at the field I'm in. Again, I'm highly trained, taught people. And I started looking at back pain in general, and I'm like, wait a second, in 20 years, despite the fact that we're injecting more people, doing more surgeries on people, prescribing more drugs than anywhere else in the world, our outcomes with chronic pain and back pain specifically are no better. In fact, there's evidence saying that we're doing worse now. There's more people on disability, there's more people taking medications, there's more people who aren't getting on with their lives. And so that got me into really looking into what the problem was, and I discovered we really, when it comes to pain, we didn't understand it well, despite being trained in it. And then the way that we should be treating it was completely different. Now that's not really compatible to a medical model that wants you to cut, poke, and drug people frequently. The more, the better. Not saying people are bad. That's just the system. And I was like, this isn't the way. We need to do more lifestyle and behavior change. We've got to start about stress, improving stress, stress management skills. Really, though, that behavior change and finding ways to motivate people and get people to take action is how people get better with pain.
Right.
Okay, and learning about it a little bit differently. And I started looking at medicine overall, and it was similar for all the chronic diseases. 70% of healthcare dollars are spent on the treatment of chronic diseases. And those are things like heart disease, diabetes is a big one, obesity-related diseases, chronic pain's in there, and all of them come down to lifestyle and behavior. And the pills don't do anything; they just cover up the symptoms. Surgeries that are being performed, we haven't got to the underlying issue. We haven't really got people to change their behavior, and so that's what started Straight Shot Health. Was one, a dissatisfaction. I think there's a lot of people that didn't see this. Particularly people who are going to their physicians often and thinking that they're getting treated. The medical system itself doesn't have a great role for this. There's more and more talk. I follow a lot of stuff online, and people are talking a lot, but the change is so glacially slow. I just couldn't stand it. And I'm like, okay, let's put out a website. Let's put out a podcast. We'll get interesting guests on there. We'll talk about really what the problems are and how to address them effectively. And so that's a long answer for a very short question.
It's a fabulous answer, and I love your philosophy and the approach that you're taking to solve a very big problem. And I guess the first question I have for you is, after going through all your training and from what you know about the medical system, your point of view is radically different from what's practiced. What has been the response from your peers or even the patients that you've been trying to serve because you're taking such a different approach?
That's interesting, right? So sometimes I get in front of rooms full of physicians or even just lay people in the community, and sometimes I think that the first couple times specifically, I thought, oh my God, people are going to think I'm some raving lunatic. But people come up and tell me, and they're like, yes, thank you for saying this, and that makes sense. And doctors are, I would say, overall supportive. I think there's huge problems in the medical system, and a lot of them is that doctors feel trapped. And they say, well, what can I do? What can I do? There's nothing else I can do. I got 5 minutes of time. There's a perception in some ways that patients want this stuff. They want they want to do something, and so they're not satisfied with it either. But this will come up later, I think, if we touch on some other questions. But there's a lack of. I don't want to offend anybody, but really doing the right thing because it's the right thing is hard, and there's a lot of fear, and you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. You're in a hospital system. You may or may not be in a practice. You may have all these bills to pay, and so you're concerned, obviously, about whether ends are going to meet or whatever, what the case may be, or what your peers may see. So it's been challenging. I think that the biggest part for me is when I talk about pain. Right. Like I do a lot with pain specifically, and then I do healthcare in general. The healthcare in general ones are a little easier. When I talk about pain to primary care docs particularly, there's so much bad information. It's it's trying to change beliefs, and beliefs is really hard. Like when people have an ingrained belief, that's been a battle. Or they say they get it, and then I do some consulting, and I have a meeting I do every month and stuff, and every month I swear it's like I sometimes repeat the same thing over again. People say they got it the first time, and then they come out with something saying, well, they say like, oh, the MRI didn't show pain, and every month I'm like, MRIs do not show pain. You got to disconnect that. So it's frustrating. But on the same token, if you really want, this is a debate I have, is if you really want to have a huge impact on the healthcare system, then it's going to come through doctors in the healthcare system. Right. You can be off on the side and talking to people, and you can get a small cadre of people, and even in the internet, if it's thousands or whatever, you're not going to get the large impact that you can in the health system. And that's challenging for me, because it's also the most frustrating part. It just drives me nuts. It's like people say talking to physicians and things are hurting cats is worse than that. Cats are way easier to manage. way easier. So
that's a perfect segue into the next question. Like, this is a very big task, and it's a big undertaking that you're trying to do with your company. What made you decide that you were going to be the one to try and tackle this problem? Not to say that you're going to solve all the issues, but what made you decide that, yes, this is a very big problem, the way we are handling healthcare and the medical system here in the U.S. I am going to try and fix it with what I can do.
Or approach it in some way. I'm like, some days you're like, what did I do? This is crazy. It's like, that red pill, blue pill thing from the Matrix? I think about that often. If you know how hard it's going to be, maybe you should have just never swallowed the red pill. But it only becomes down to, I don't want to sound pompous or anything. There's a difference between right and wrong, and I've always had a big idealistic streak since the time I was little. And my mom has stories about me going to things and wearing, a hat that I really liked, and kids saying something was bad, and I'd be upset and cry. And she's like, "Well, just take the hat off." And I'm like, "But Mom, I like that hat. It's a nice hat, and people should just not be mean." And she's like, "Well, they're gonna make fun of you." And I'm like, "Well, fine." And then I'd do it, and then I'd get all mad and upset again. I just got to the point I couldn't do it. Like, I literally, when you're lying awake at night and you're going, what I'm doing, like what I am actually being paid to do, or what I am being, I don't want to say told, but motivated or strongly encouraged, because I was in a group that obviously wanted to make money, that makes money, and it's wrong. There's nothing worse. I mean, there's absolutely nothing worse. And luckily, I'm married to a fantastic woman, and I said, I can't do this. This is killing me. And she said, all right, you figure something else out. And so that began the journey here.
Right. No, that's a tough one. But I think a lot of people find themselves in a similar situation. They're in a career. It may not be quite as serious where they feel like ethically they can't do it, but they do have a tough time going to work every day, and they have to have that conversation with themselves. How am I going to continue to do this? So you mentioned your wife was very supportive of you making a change in your career. Are there any other circumstances that were existing that sort of influence your decision making? A lot of times whenever people are deciding to go into entrepreneurship, they want to make sure that all the conditions are perfectly lined up, all their ducks in a row, and unfortunately, that rarely happens. So was there anything else or noteworthy about what was going on with your life around the time that you made the decision to start Straight Shot Health?
Yeah, well, I guess there's other moving parts in there. So I had a contract, and my contract was a 2-year contract with my group, and then either you became partner or not. And within probably the last year, I knew I didn't want to stay there. And or if I did, I wanted to do it more in a role where I could start doing more education. I wanted to do actually group appointments, get patients in, all the stuff that doesn't fit, right? And but doesn't when you get paid to do, I could do an epidural steroid injection in somebody's back, and that can make anywhere from $300 to $1,200, and takes me 5 minutes to do. You get a group of people, and you're lucky if you're going to get paid, or you have to ask people to pay. And when it comes to health, people don't really want it, even if it's $10 or $20. It's because this crazy, discontinuity there. They didn't like that, and so they actually said, "Hey, well, this doesn't seem to be working right. Why don't you leave?" And I'm like, "Okay, fine," but they wanted to maintain a non-compete against me. So the non-compete clause means that I couldn't practice for a year and a half in literally like 50 miles of where I live.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, they tried it. So long story short is, I said, well, fine, we can change the contract, and you don't have to do this, and let me early, but we'll get rid of the non-complete. They didn't want that, so they basically said, well, we'll just run your contract out so that you can't practice. But that gave me 6 months. It gave me literally 6 months to say, okay, I have a 6-month window here. What am I going to do?
Okay.
And so you have to sort of, it forces your hand in some ways. I knew that the date was coming in a lot of ways. Did I still know what I was getting to? Absolutely not. You don't. If any of your listeners are parents, I was a doctor, and I delivered babies when I was in medical school and stuff. And when we had our first child and I was in residency, you're like, I don't know how to take care of this thing when I get home. So you're never ready.
Right.
But it's been fun. I mean, it's challenging. It's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. It's, you're starting something new. It's very difficult, but I would never go back. I just wouldn't go back.
Oh, that's awesome. It's awesome to know that you're doing something that you're enjoying, and you feel like you're on a better path than you were previously.
Yeah, well, and I wanted to add something there, because you were talking about people having the courage to change. And a lot of that, I think, comes down to is we put ourselves into false prisons. So in Desperale's world, we are not scraping by to get food. We are not scraping by to put a tent over our head. What we do is we do a lot of consumerism. So we spend too much, and we put ourselves into debt. Credit card, buy cars and things like that. Well, the first thing is you're going to do if you want to free yourself from your job is you want to get rid of as much debt as you possibly can. And then the other thing is realize you don't need the newest iPhone. You don't need the fancy this. You don't need to. We have so much that if you just sit back and appreciate what you have, and understanding that the freedom that you can have on your own life, that time is so important. So a lot of people are, I can't quit my job. Well, I'll tell you what, we still have $100 and something thousand in debt, and we're still not making nearly as much money as I did. I mean, not even close to what I did as a physician. But you can do it, right? It becomes an excuse in a lot of ways. There's very, very, very few people that cannot do something.
Right. Right. And I guess you have to also weigh at the same time, what is your peace of mind worth? Before you were in a situation you were making, a very good living, but you didn't have any peace about what you were doing. Now you've got peace. You're not making as much at the moment, but that doesn't mean you can't get there soon. But the cost of that, sometimes it's you can't measure the value of your state of mind.
Oh, and you can't measure the health that it causes on you either. So if you put somebody in an environment where they don't feel out of control and they're highly dissatisfied, that has this chronic stress reaction. And what that leads to is chronic inflammation in your body, accelerated heart disease. Yeah. There's a host of other medical problems associated with it. So you're basically killing yourself. I mean, it's not peace of mind. It's actually also peace of body. And we ignore that. But if you look at
people say that I'm killing myself here, but actually
it's true.
It's true.
It is true. And I'm not trying to stress anybody out by saying that, but it is definitely true. Or, people suffer for 20, 30 years at a job and say they're going to retire, and then what do? They die shortly thereafter. I mean, that's generally what the statistics say.
No good.
Yeah.
All right. So you said before, whenever you got into this, you had really no idea what you were getting into, but you knew you had to do it. What was your biggest fear whenever you got started?
I think the biggest fear for me was what people were going to say. Okay, because the message is so different in a lot of ways. I mean, once you start looking around, you see some little candles kind of in the night or whatever. But when you're doing it yourself, you feel a lot alone. And as I said, I'm not being facetious when I say I get up in front of people talking and think that they're looking at me like I'm crazy, because I also get very passionate about this stuff. And then there's the fears of, well, what are the doctors going to say, or are they going to say nasty things about you? I didn't even have legal concerns that someone's going to sue you because of stuff you said on the internet, and most of that is all false. But I don't know, we all do it. We all are scared of, once you start having an opinion and putting an opinion out there, you just have to do it and do it and do it, and eventually you realize everybody's scared of doing something. But if you believe in it and it's true, and you're out there to help people, then you should be saying it, no matter what the other detractors may say.
Awesome. So now, looking back, it's been a few years. How many years has it been since you've been doing this?
Actually, it hasn't been years. It's only been about a year and a half.
Okay.
So we're still pretty new.
All right. So I bet you learned a lot between the time you started from where you are now. So if you had to give any advice to your younger self, let's say at the beginning of that 6-month mark, whenever you were leaving the practice, what advice would you give yourself if you're starting over from an entrepreneur standpoint?
Whew. I would say in some ways you have to pick something specific. So in the online space, people talk about niching down, and I have so many interests. Obviously, I have pain, I have healthcare in general, I have the way that people actually practice medicine, 4 different facets of health and wellness. But really, you need to pick one and start there.
Okay.
And that would probably be the biggest struggle I've had, is actually focusing on one thing. Pick your primary target that you want to focus on and just do it. I think as a beginning entrepreneur, you think, well, if I'm only doing that one thing, then that's there's not enough. I have to be big and broad and answer everybody, and it's not the case. Someone told me this too. I should have known this, because someone said you need to niche down, particularly with my podcast. They said you need to niche down enough that it is uncomfortable, that you think you're so narrow. And I did not listen, and that's probably what I should have listened to more than anything else.
It's okay. You learn and you're able to adjust. That's the cool thing about having your own business. You're the boss and you can make your own rules so you can change something.
And it comes down to life too. Basically, you learn from past experiences, and the ones that we learn most effectively from are failures and pain. In fact, we're hardwired for it. We have that loss aversion. It's a survival mechanism, because if we made something when we were cave people and when we didn't eat for a month or whatever, we didn't want to make that mistake again because it was going to kill our species off. So we're just hardwired for that loss learning. But if you view it as learning rather than something to be terrified about, it's better. Still hard, particularly when you have many years of not thinking that way and trying to re-educate yourself.
So how are you different now as an entrepreneur and running your business than you were before you started? I think I have an idea, but if you want to just verbalize how you're different or what's different about your life.
Oh, everything, I would say. Everything. Being respectful, but again, having an opinion. Really, I was scared in the past at confronting a couple things, particularly when I was talking to physicians, calling things out directly. That has changed, and that has to do with knowing your stuff, though. I would say when you spend the time and you go through hundreds of papers, and then someone wants to argue with you, that's not as much of an issue. Somehow I lost the question. What?
No, I'm just wondering, how are you? Like, what's different about you now that you're an entrepreneur?
Oh, I think the big one is when you look at entrepreneurism. I've done a lot of reading and talked to a lot of entrepreneurs. I go to a lot of different events trying to meet people that are making change. And I think for me the big one is value creation. So people have this idea about business, particularly people who aren't entrepreneurs or aren't thinking about business or even aren't thinking about talking about sales and marketing, and they think, well, there's big companies out there that are making hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever, and they're all evil. Well, that's not the case. What you should connect, though, is value to money. So if you're producing lots of value, then there's no reason not to get paid. And for entrepreneurs in general, just that value-seeking behavior. If you are trying to improve and make people's lives, that really is. So every time I'm out there, I'm always looking, well, what's the value in this? What's causing it? And that's probably why healthcare drives me nuts. Because people will equate entrepreneurialism with having a business and making sales. There's a lot of people out there that are doing lots of marketing, lots of sales, but the stuff sucks. It's crap. It does not bring any value into this world. Right. And to me, that's not what an entrepreneur is. They're value creators and focusing on that. So then it also makes it difficult if we go into a business or something or we get mailing and I read things and my poor wife hears me rant about this. There's no value in this, and what's this person doing? Or this business should have done this from a customer standpoint. If you actually address these concerns rather than just begging people to come to your store, it would be better for them and it would increase the value for their customer experience. So it's always focused on value now. What's the value?
Very cool. Now, what has been your biggest failure? You said a lot of times you learn from pain and failures and things like that. What has been your biggest failure?
Oh, I was talking dead on about the niching down and focus. So my problem is definitely focusing and keeping on track. Okay. And I still struggle with it. It's the hardest thing is to actually keep doing it consistently in this direction. And what I found is if I have about 2 or 3 projects that I'm working on, then weirdly that has sort of worked for me, because I'll go this way and then I'll jump to this way and then this way and then I can come back to one of them. So at least I have 3 things that are sort of moving forward. But knowing that if I just was focusing on one, the progress would be much faster, quicker, and better. But we're always learning, who knows?
Right. But you recognize what the issue is, and you're actively working on trying to find something to help you along with it.
Yeah. It's definitely a work in progress.
What has been your proudest moment to date?
Oh, proudest moment. I think there's a couple. I've had some, as I said, when I was speaking to physician groups, I was really concerned. But I got really strong feedback and been invited back, and people say it was it was useful, it was great. I had comments. I always ask people for comments and send them anonymously after I'm done. And people just said some really, if if physicians were doing this, our healthcare would be better. If particularly when it comes to pain, if people are actually approaching pain in this manner, things would be better. Our healthcare system would improve. I've had a couple people through some online programs that I've run that have said some really, really wonderful things. I mean, like you don't think that you're changing lives, but you really can. And I had one in particular that dropped. It wasn't even. This program had nothing to do with pain. It was a stress program, a behavioral-oriented stress program, and how to develop habits and stuff. And she sent me an email about how it had improved her life and improved her family life, and how she had dropped half of her medications. Again, this was nothing to do with pain. That was really cool. That was really cool. I think part of it is because there's a disconnect there. Is you can get isolated and you don't really know if what you're doing is producing that value. But they'll come through and it's fun. Those are probably the big ones for me.
It's great whenever you get those emails that someone says that something you've done has actually impacted them on a tangible level. So yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Any parting words of wisdom for entrepreneurs as they are working on their business or thinking of starting a business?
Oh, I got so many. I want to keep it short here. I think the number one is just make sure, always focus on value. Value to whoever that your end user is, your customer, your tribe, whatever the case may be. Because if you bring value to people, things are going to come back to you. So even if things aren't working well and you're not maybe struggling financially, you'll feel you're feeling good, and there's an intangible benefit there. Now, if you're producing garbage and you're not doing well, then not only will you not be doing well financially, but you're going to be feeling crappy too. So always focus on that value metric. The other thing is to do it, right? We make a lot of excuses and we feel trapped in things. Excuses are generally excuses because we don't want to, for whatever reason, we don't want to commit to it. So I would say, that though there's what Yoda say, do or not do, there's no try. Really, it comes down to either don't say you would like to, but you're going to do it, and you're going to put a time frame on when you're going to start, and you're going to be firm to that, or just say, it's not for me right now, and then be okay with that decision. Not everybody has to go out and start their own business, but if you are going to do it, then do it.
Go for it. Give it everything you got. No, I completely agree. What can we expect to see from you in the future?
What can you expect from me? That's going to be interesting. I have a couple programs that I'm developing, so I'm in these online programs. That'll be really interesting. I'm going to be more focused specifically on pain, so that'll probably be in the next 2 months. I'll be launching that program, completely different, it's back pain in particular. That I'm pretty excited about, a little bit scared of, which I guess is always a good thing. You've got that fear in the background going. I would like to be writing more, and I would like to, I'm moving with my podcast a little bit more to an interviewing format, trying to find really interesting people that have inspiring stories for people. Particularly, you're doing business, I'm thinking about health.
Yeah.
So I have met some really, really great people, and I've just found that people like those. And then the other one, and I do some solo podcasting too, but those are really tough, and I'm trying to incorporate that in a way that spend that pound building something that people can actually get use out of, rather than a one episode where you may be spouting about the problems and only can't touch on the solutions as much as you want to.
Yeah.
So.
No, that one podcast that you talked about with highlighting the stories of people who have had some really good outcomes, that sounds fabulous. People, I think, really do respond well to hearing other people's success stories, because it sort of gives them hope that they can achieve the same thing. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and there's things that you just don't I couldn't believe. Like, there's diseases out there, and I'm not there's diseases that traditionally in traditional healthcare we say that there's no cure for. But one of my interviewees, I had met her, and actually I was at an event, and we got talking about healthcare or whatever, because I obviously don't mind talking and telling people this stuff. And she had Crohn's disease, which is a inflammatory bowel disease, okay, and it's traditionally incurable. You can't, you can sort of adjust a little bit, but they mostly give you steroids or these other, kind of nasty drugs. and they wanted to cut out her colon, like a large chunk of her intestinal tract. And she's like, I don't. And they told her they had to do it within 30 days. She's like, I don't want to do this.
Oh, wow.
Or at least right now in this moment in time. And so what she did is she decided to take really active control of her diet. Now she runs a very successful gluten-free bakery, et cetera, et cetera. But we talked about this briefly in the episode. I don't know if it was necessarily the diet portion. Okay, there's this whole thing about gluten-free and foods and stuff, but there's a lot of evidence talking about control. Like if you actually take active control over your health. Right. And so she's like, I'm going to do this, and she started taking control of her diet, and she changed a lot of the way that she viewed her disease, and she's had complete remission. She's not on any medications at all, nothing. And
that's amazing.
And it is. Typically, I wouldn't have heard of that before if I, or believed it in a lot of ways, unless I actually met her, talked to her, saw her.
Right.
And there's been more than one of those, so that's kind of neat to see.
Very cool. Well, you're doing fabulous work, and I look forward to hearing all the great things and seeing all the great things that you continue to do. I will make sure to put all the information, your information, in the show notes. But go ahead and tell us, where can people find you?
The easiest place is probably straightshothealth.com. That's sort of the hub for everything. If you just want to listen to the podcast, that's Straight Shot Health Talk. It's available on iTunes. But the easiest one is just go to Straight Shot Health Talk. Or just straightshothealth.com. That's where most of the stuff is. You can find me. There's links. You can email me, all that jazz. So.
All right, cool. That'll be in the show notes. All right,
okay,
you ready for the bonus question?
The bonus question, yes, I'm excited.
All right, so a lot of times we've all watched movies. We all have seen at least one movie, and there a lot of times the writing is great, and there's sometimes maybe just one line from a movie that really sticks out. So if you can go ahead and deliver a line from a movie that always sticks in your head, or that you've acted out even in your home or talking to your wife or your kids, go ahead and share that with us today.
Now I have to act it out?
Just, you can deliver the line, but go ahead and set up the scene. Let us know what's going on.
There's at least, two or three in this episode alone. Old Master Yoda, he's very wise. I think the one of the biggest ones, though, was for me, and it's actually from the movie, not the book, which is a rarity, but was from Harry Potter. And it was the decision between, I can't remember exactly what it is, but Harry, at some point, we're going to coming to the place where you have to make a choice between doing what is right and what is easy. And that one stuck for me because, particularly with the problems that we have in the healthcare system, it really comes down to doing what is right and versus what is easy. And it's a challenge. I mean, people sound like, well, it's a no-brainer. Always do what's right. Well, it isn't quite as a no-brainer as that.
Right.
And there's a lot of life lessons in there too. So, it's what's easy? Well, sitting doing nothing, eating whatever is foisted on you by the television saying you need to go to McDonald's. That's easy. Yeah. Driving through the drive-through. Right. What's hard and what is the right thing to do, though, is to keep yourself active, choose healthy foods, choose a job that you like. Don't feel trapped in these situations. It's easy to be, there's a saying about the comfort of misery, because miserable is actually very comfortable because it's known. But the challenge of really getting out there and doing things is the right thing to do is hard. Because you're breaking out of that comfort zone. You're never quite sure. It's again, we're hardwired for it. There's a lot of reasons our body says this is whatever it is right now, no matter how not good it is. We like this because it's known, it's easy, and it's comfortable.
Right.
So that's a big one for me. I think about that probably daily. Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing, Kevin. This has been wonderful. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned tons, as sure the audience will as well. And so again, just thank you for joining us. This has been great.
Well, thank you, Sonia, and good luck to you with all your endeavors.
Thank you. Kevin had so many wonderful things to share. I was actually kind of giddy as I was talking to him. But there is one thing in particular that stood out to me. And that brings us to today's I Am the One challenge. It's great to learn from the experiences of others, but you've got to apply those lessons if you want to make them work for you. So based upon Kevin's insights, here's today's challenge question for you. What is the one thing you need to focus on to move your business forward? For the next 6 months, what is the one most important thing you need to accomplish? Think about it and then head on over to IamTheOne.fm where you can find this episode. There you'll see I've prepared a worksheet for you to help you address the challenge question for your business. Now, once you've got your answer, leave it in the comments on the show notes page or even tweet me at Sonia E. Thompson and let me know what you're focusing on. Until next time, keep working on building your dream business so you can make life better. Somebody's waiting on you. Thanks for watching.